So today, viewers, we're in a 1997 Subaru Liberty Wagon, the GL model. Nice car to drive, this one actually. It handles quite well given its age, but a bit of a problem with the brakes. So we're going to go and see what we can do to resolve that here today. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. Okay, so here we are, we're back at the house, we're all set up, we've got everything ready to go. We've got the jack stands, we've got the brand new disc brakes, we've got the pads, we've got some more brake fluid there in case we need it. I think we'll use that anyway, give the brakes a bit of a flush while we're at it. Makes sense, but more on that later. And of course we've got the tools, so let's not waste any more time, let's get to work. One thing to remember when jacking up any vehicle is to chock the tyre opposite to the corner that you're jacking up. So in this case, if you were to jack up, say, the left hand front tyre, you'd want to be chocking the right hand rear tyre. On this occasion we're going to be jacking up both front tyres, so we're going to need to chock both rear tyres. Now you should use a correct wheel chock, but if you haven't got one, a decent sized lump of timber or a brick will do the job. And just place it under the tyre like so, and that'll stop the vehicle from rolling backwards. Okay, now that we've got our chock set, the next thing that we're going to do is jack up the car. We can find our jack locating points directly under here. They're marked out by two little notches. And we take our jack and start winding. Here comes the fun part. Now before we get too far ahead of ourselves jacking the car up, one thing that we do need to do is of course make sure the handbrake's on the car's in gear, but aside from that we're going to need to crack some of these wheel nuts first. This will make our job a lot easier when the wheel's actually up in the air. Now we're going to be bleeding the brakes anyway today, but it's a good idea from the start to just loosen off your brake master cylinder cap. Don't take it off completely, keep it on there so that it stops the dust and moisture getting in, but just loosen it off so that the fluid can flow freely later on. Alright, so we've now got both wheels off, the lid's loose on the master cylinder, handbrake's on, car's in gear, let's get to work. Okay, so our next task, now that we've got all the wheels off and everything, is going to be to take the caliper off. Now, naturally, in the interest of good television, we've already loosened a couple of nuts, bolts, so we're going to take them off now. Now here we can see the calipers locked on. The reason that is because the pads have actually worn that much into the rotor that they're stuck behind this lip here. To overcome that, what I've done is I've put a wheel nut on there. That's going to hold the rotor in place a little bit better. Now normally we shy away from doing this sort of thing, but we know both pads and rotors are going to get replaced anyway, so we'll just pry those away. And eventually we'll find that the caliper just slips off like that. We'll hang that one away and go from there. So with the caliper out the way, getting the old rotor off is just that simple. Occasionally you might have some difficulties, and if you do, you'll notice that there's some threads in there. So you just run some bolts in, tighten them both evenly, 2 turns, 2 turns, or 10 turns, 10 turns, whatever takes your fancy. Just run them in evenly and they'll push the rotor away from the hub. Once we've done that, we take our new hub, our new disc, sorry, just line it up there with the wheel studs, place it on there. Now, a little tip from earlier, if you want to make it stay in place, just put a wheel nut on there and that'll hold it secure while you get on with changing brake pads. Now when it comes to changing brake pads, look, there's right ways, there's wrong ways, there's backyard ways, there's DIY ways, there's all sorts of ways. At the end of the day, you should always follow the manufacturer's instructions, and if you're not sure, take it to a reputable mechanic or brake and clutch specialist. But quite simply, old pads push out like that. New pads just slip in the same way. When you go to fit it on the disc though, you may find that there's a bit of resistance there. If that is the case, pull the new pads back out and just simply push that piston back in. There's various tools that you can buy for doing this to make the job easier, but whatever takes your fancy, that's just the basics. Now, as I said, there's plenty of tools out there. This is just one such tool that I like to use. Just simply winds in, pushes a plate back up against here. Thread pushes the piston back in up against the old pad. Remember, the old pad, not the new one, otherwise you'll screw that up. Once you got that in far enough, you're satisfied with where that sits, just take a brake line clamp, place it on there, and then you can back that off and know that the caliper piston is pushed back in enough for you to get your new pads in. Now, when you got your new pads, it's a good idea to always read them. Sometimes you might find that you've got an inner and an outer pad, a left and a right. Being sure to check that will make sure that you avoid unnecessary mistakes later on. Once you got the new pads in, as the old Gregory's manuals used to say, installation is simply the opposite of removal. Okay, so we've got the new rotor on. The new pads are in, the caliper's been bolted up. We've also set the torque settings on those bolts. That's something very important. Check your manufacturer's guidelines for that, but very important that you not only use a bit of Loctite as well on those threads, but torque up those bolts to the correct torque sequence as specified by your manufacturer. There's only one thing left to do now. We're just going to do a little gravity bleed on the brakes. Those of you who don't know what a gravity bleed is, it's where we just back off the bleeder nipple and let the forces of gravity do all the work. So we'll just wait till we can see a bit of fluid coming up there in the lines. A couple of air bubbles came through, so that's a good sign that we've got those out nice and early. Yep, so now we've got some good clear fluid. Just tighten that back up. Let that fall into the bottle. Put the bleeder cap back on. We're good to go. Put the wheel on, we'll go for a test drive. Stick around. Okay, so we've done the brakes. There's only one thing left to do, and that's start it up and let's go for a drive. Okay, so far the brakes seem to be working really well. They've come up better than what the previous brakes were, and that's what we were hoping for ultimately. So now it's just time to give the car back to the owner, see what he thinks. Thanks for watching. You're watching Motorvated.
Performed really high up there as well. Number 4 going to Darryl Walford with a 5.695 from ACT. Yep, and 6 spot goes to no fist caution safe as the Sean Kirkman. The first SA boy. Yeah, with a 5.776. Right behind him, another South Australian, Shane Kirk. Number Shane Craig, I should say. Number 6 spot, 5.805. And number 7, the Blue Mark. 5.807. And we check it out with a 6.05.